Hello people. So as I said, the menstrual cycle has two parts. Natural changes in the menstrual cycle occur in the ovaries, and this is called the ovarian cycle. And on the other hand, natural changes are happening in the uterus. So many of these changes happen in the endometrium that I showed here. So this is the endometrium, its basal part and the functional part of the endometrium. So the basal part and the functional part. And changes in the endometrium, so this is the endometrium. Changes in the endometrium are called the uterine cycle. So together, the ovarian and the uterine cycle and all the hormones that are produced make up the menstrual cycle. So basically, the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle are also subdivided. The ovarian cycle has this first phase that is called the follicular phase. So the follicular phase. So this is the first phase where these follicles are developing. Then it has this phase that is called ovulation. So in this phase, we have the egg bursting out the ovaries and going into the tube. And then we have the last phase. This phase is called the luteal phase. So in this phase, the luteinizing hormone is making the development of the corpus luteum that secretes hormone, and the luteinizing hormone is very important. So that is why it is called the luteal phase. So these are the parts of the ovarian cycle. The parts of the uterine cycle. So first of all, the first day of bleeding is the first day of the menstrual cycle. So because of that, the first part of the menstrual cycle, the first phase is menstruation. Then the second phase, so that would be this phase, is called the proliferative phase because the cells are proliferating, dividing, and getting a bigger number of themselves. So the proliferative phase. Then the last phase of the uterine cycle is called the secretory phase. Mainly because these glands, these are uterine glands, they're secreting a lot of substances that will make, if there is an implantation, a good environment for the egg to implant. So with a lot of nutrients and substances. So now we will see how are these changes influenced by hormones. So here we have two hormones and how they are and their concentrations throughout the menstrual cycle. So the red hormone is actually estrogen, and the black hormone is progesterone. So at the beginning of the cycle, when the first day of the bleeding. So the corpus luteum was destroyed, and we have the follicular stimulating hormone is stimulating the follicles to grow. As the follicles grow and as the granulosa cells get bigger in number, we see how estrogen who is produced by them is rising in concentration until the day when before ovulation. Because the digraph follicle is then destroyed, many cells are destroyed, and because they produce, the cells of the digraph follicle produce estrogen, of course we have the a fall in its concentration. Progesterone is very low in the first parts of the cycle, but then as luteinizing hormone is having a spike, and as this remnant of the digraph follicle is being converted into corpus luteum cells, which produce a lot of estrogen, we see how its concentration rises. And it rises until the corpus luteum reaches its peak production capacity. And when the corpus luteum is basically starting to shrink, we see that also progesterone is starting to fall. And in the end, when the corpus luteum is finished, it falls low. So this is how these two hormones change. How do they contribute? Estrogen is secreted to make the proliferative phase of the uterine cycle possible. So basically, these cells, when they secrete estrogen, the granulosa cells, they are actually preparing. So at the beginning of the cycle, everything was shredded with the menstrual bleeding, with the menstruation, and we have only the basal part of the endometrium. Now, this basal part needs a stimulus to build up all this mass, all these glands and cells, and this is estrogen. Estrogen is being secreted. It prepares the endometrium because it stimulates proliferation. In the secretory part, in order for the cells to prepare themselves to accumulate nutrients, and in order for the glands to start secreting, we need progesterone that is secreted by the corpus luteum, and this progesterone is important for the secretory phase and estrogen for the proliferative phase. So they are important hormones for the preparation for a possible pregnancy, for the preparation of the uterus. Their rapid fall, if there is no implantation, because there is no corpus luteum to produce both of them, their rapid fall actually makes so if there are if there is no concentration of these hormones to actually stimulate the structure, the menstruation happens. So basically, there is an erosion of this functional part of the endometrium, and we have menstrual bleeding. Also, two important hormones are luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So the red line is follicle stimulating hormone, and the dark line is luteinizing hormone. So as I said, the follicle stimulating hormone, we see the estrogen has a negative effect. If estrogen is high, follicle stimulating hormone is low. If progesterone is high, luteinizing hormone is low. So basically, at the beginning of the cycle, when we don't have a lot of estrogen, follicle stimulating hormone starts to rise, and it stimulates the beginning of a new cycle, of a new ovarian cycle, and new follicles to develop. As estrogen rises, follicle stimulating hormone starts to slow down a bit, but then as estrogen, as we have ovulation and the destruction of the digraph follicle, estrogen falls, so FSH again rises because there is not much estrogen. The pituitary thinks estrogen is falling, I need to secrete FSH, and FSH is being secreted. FSH. And when we look at the luteinizing hormone is low in the first part of the cycle, or it is secreted at some concentration. But the main thing is that this spike in luteinizing hormone, people are not sure why really this spike is happening and how it is regulated. But when it happens, it converts the remnant of the Graafic follicle into the corpus luteum, that starts to secrete a lot of progesterone, and because of that, in the second part of the cycle, the luteinizing hormone concentrations are lower. And because the corpus luteum is also producing some estrogen, and the FSH hormone is also lower. And when the cycle comes to an end, the corpus luteum gets converted into the corpus albicans that doesn't produce hormones. So then both of these hormones at the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next start to rise. So even though these are not all the hormones, there are other hormones that are still being observed, and this is still being the theories around the cycle are being some theories around the cycle are being developed. We have a pretty good understanding basically how everything happens and how these hormones contribute. So how FSH and LH contribute in the control of estrogen and progesterone through the changes that they are making possible in the ovaries, and then how estrogen and progesterone are changing the uterus. So basically FSH and LH are making changes in the ovaries, and the hormones that are produced in the ovaries, estrogen and progesterone, are making changes to the uterus, and everything is only centered around one goal, and that is to prepare the uterus and the female for a possible pregnancy. Thank you.